Hi, good morning, everyone. Just a quick announcement. Apologies, in terms of the error in terms of like module 3.2. So, I updated the handwritten submission. So, given the technicality, what we're gonna be doing would be I moved the deadline to December 22, and then you can just upload it if you've already finished it in terms of problems and time. So, just wanted to give an extra 2 days in terms of those that experience technical difficulty for this. So I apologize. But I think it should be okay now. So kindly message na lang sa Facebook group if there's anything else needed to be changed or updated. So aside from this, in terms of admin matters, so yun again, because of the memo of the transport strike, and I think a good thing, bad thing. We won't have face-to-face classes on our last week for 2023 in terms of 99.1. So I already set the schedule. So ano yung mangyayari? Basically, what's gonna happen would be that January 3, pagbalik, we'll have our AR quiz. Then January 5, we'll have our PPE quiz. The reason being, parang yun na talaga yung warm-up natin for the last module exam. With that said, definitely, I can't imagine how your semester's been going. I'm sure it has its challenges rin. So for the break, I hope that you're able to enjoy, spend time with your family. Pero one of the things lang na I wanted to remind you would be to make sure na hindi mawawala yung momentum or just hindi mawawala yung mastery over the lesson. Kasi mahirap, wala na tayo masyadong time to battle the inertia coming in from the break. So parang kung from time to time, you can just look at it. So for me, one of the things talaga that I heavily suggest is really when you say work-life balance, it's really more about rather than parang spending all of your time in accounting during the break. I don't think that should be the case. But I think as much as possible, kahit mga 1 to 2 exercises per day, so divide nyo into parang receivables and PPE. And then from time to time, you just check, you browse through, alam nyo naman kung ano yung mga kailangan nyo ng refresher and mastery. The recorded lectures will always be there uploaded for you. My request lang would be, in some days of the break, please make sure na nagre-review na kayo for your exam. Kasi mahirap talaga siya habulin na parang January 2, you're still parang tired from the New Year celebration, and then you have to switch gears for the quiz and then for the PPE. So better na now na since we're still naman doing like our sessions, wag na natin pakawalan and just keep the momentum a bit just so that hindi siya masyadong mahirap to go back from the break. So with that said, in terms of our schedule, actually yung extra time, to be frank with you, face to face, dapat 2 quizzes na lang. So I think the only thing that's missing in terms of like the whole lecture would be this lesson on the exercises for PPE. So with that said, unless someone would say may consultation sila on Friday, this would be our last session na for the year, right? So last na natin to, and then we'll have our quizzes na for PPE and AR coming next year. So with that said, we'll deep dive to property, plant, and equipment. Like what I mentioned, the problem sets are just extra exercises, right? So in terms of new exercises, just to give you more chances in terms of just really understanding the topic, I prepared then other exercises here that could help you, right? So in terms of our PPE exercises, all I'm telling you would be, kailangan magaling lang kayo in terms of 3 things in PPE in particular, not IA, not mineral resources, in PPE. The very first thing that you have to be good at in terms of property, plant, and equipment would be classifying them. And again, as a review, what are the 4 types of PPE? That would be land improvements, building, and equipment. So, ano yung challenge for this? You really have to answer the exercises. You have to also, and I recommend na you look for other exercises. So, later in this set of exercises, you'll see may mga bagong terms na hindi pa nakalagay dun sa slide so that it would help you in terms of 2 things. Number 1, pag lumabas sila, you already know how to classify them. And then number 2, applying what you know in order to accurately have like the intuition on how to categorize them properly. So with that said, we'll have just a quick refresher in terms of the following definitions. So first, you'll have land. So land, the two things is that the difference between land and investment properties is that tons, right? It's a tangible. It should be what? For business use or operations and not for sale. So in essence, land should be used for operations as a manufacturing plant, as an office site, and you have to be aware of the different things that goes into it. So your purchase price, your settlement cost. So usually yung mga nalilito is like escrow, title fees, commissions of course, accrued property tax and lien. So taxes in arrears, taxes on the land, any tax that's associated with the land, we capitalize. And then necessary cost. So yun, I think to focus, grading, leveling, landfill, clearing of trees, land survey, and assessment are all capitalized on land. So another thing or key concept for land is that land does not depreciate. So basically, those are the two important concepts for land. Now, for land improvements, it's really just structural additions that you make on the land to enhance it or to improve it. So pag may nakita na kayo na driveway, parking lot, fence, landscaping, sewage, sidewalk, pavements, underground sprinklers, in essence, all of these are just structural additions made on the land. Then next would be building that could either be two things. Either binili mo yung building, you bought it, or you constructed it. So for scenario 1, when you purchased it, medyo similar siya when you purchased land, right? Purchase price, settlement costs, commissions, arrears, and then ano lang yung mga special terms? Remodeling, replacing, repairing roof, floors, electrical wiring, and plumbing. All of those are costs na you capitalize. When you say capitalize, i-treat natin siya as an asset under building, right? So we add lang natin siya to get the cost of building. The other thing or the other scenario when it comes to building is that you can construct it. So pag construction, ano na yung mga important? Excavation is for building. Excavation is for building. Interest expense to finance the project. So pag umutang ka in order to build your 10-story high-rise building, that's also under building. Temporary quarters for your workers as they work on the building is something that you capitalize. So please just familiarize yourselves in terms of these things. And then finally, for equipment, dalawa lang naman yan. For all necessary costs to bring the equipment in terms of its intended use, we capitalize. So why? There's a difference between insurance that you annually pay for, so that's outright expense, and there is an insurance during transit. Meaning that in transit, kailangan mo pa siyang dalhin. So think of it as freight. Na in order for it to properly bring it to your intended use, basically, gumagawa ka or nagbabayad ka ng insurance, right? So finally, you'll have annual recurring expenditures that are outright expense. So pag nakakita na kayo ng motor vehicle registration, insurance after installation, or ordinary repairs, this is definitely something that you outright expense. And then lastly is that there are some times wherein you'll have additional expenditures in terms of your equipment, wherein ang tatanungin nyo lang naman sa sarili nyo is that, the problem already gives you the equipment at 10,000. And then that says that after 3 years, there were additional expenditures, 5,000. The question that you will ask would be, yung 5,000 na ba yun? Is it an ordinary repair or is it something that I will add to the equipment to bring it up to 15,000? Well, in order for you to determine that, you just ask yourself, does it improve the operating efficiency and the useful life? So, for example, basically if it merely maintains the status. So kung kasing galing lang niya, hindi naman yun added value. And therefore, we have to outright expense those ordinary repairs with the journal entry, debit repair and maintenance expense, credit cash, and AP. On the other hand, if it improves the useful life, parang na-enhance yung product or yung equipment, we then add it or capitalize it to capital expenditures. And then finally, you'll have the scenario na what if bumili ka ng land and may old building on top of it, right? How are we gonna treat it? So again, the first question that you ask is the building usable? If it's no longer usable, yung buong purchase price of 1 million, ilalagay mo na siya dun sa land. Pero of course, for it to be intended use, gagastos ka pa siguro for demolition, less the salvage cost, meaning less yung how much yung binenta mo yung scraps. So land will be 1.3. Pero if it's usable, you just allocate using their fair value. So kung ang fair value ng building is 3 million, 1 million yung land, 75-25 yung ratio. So 25% times 1 million, land will be 250. So let's master this concept. So this is a new exercise wherein they gave you various different expenses. Anong important sa classification? Well, for classification, ang importante lang naman would be what? Kailangan tama lahat. Kasi for example, treat it as a quiz or treat it as an exam. You have 4 questions worth 2 points each, so 8 points. What is the proper value of land improvement, building, and expense? If meron kang isang maling categorization, for example, yung land na dapat sa land, nalagay mo sa building, mali na kagad yung land and building mo, which is basically 4 points. Automatic. Nagkamali ka pa sa land improvement and nilagay mo sa expense, wala ka na makukuha point. And the reason why it's sayang is because mastery lang naman siya, right? Parang dito lang naman matetest kung ginawa niyo talaga yung exercises and may nakita kayong other exercises, right? So, please don't take it for granted. Kasi sayang rin yung some of the easiest points that you can get under PPE. So, with that said, let's now go to land improvement, building, and expense. So first, purchase of land, well, obviously, that will be land. Land survey, that's gonna be land. Fee to search for the title of land. So this is something that you do in order for you to acquire the land. So still land. Well, building permit, well, obviously, building permit. Temporary quarters for the construction crew. So temporary quarters for people to actually build up your building. That's building. Ito, payment to tenants of old building for vacating premises. I think this is one of the first few times na we'll encounter this. So let's think. Payments to tenants of old building for vacating premises. Well, definitely that's not land improvement, right? That's not a structural addition. So it's not land improvement. Next, is it land? Well, pwede na it's land, right? But when you really think about it, the question that you ask is, bakit ba niya pinapaalis yung mga tenant? So may nakatira raw sa old building, binayaran mo for them to go out and vacate it. Bakit mo gagawin yun? Well, clearly, since nag-acquire ka ng building permit, gusto mong igiba yung old building, patayuan. So this payment to tenant is actually a cost in order for you to build your building. And therefore, this 4,450 will be under building. Raising your old building, dahil dun sa PIC interpretation, right? So raising of old building, in terms of the PIC interpretation, na nakikita nyo, it will be 41,000. Excavating is obviously building. Special assessment tax for street project. Well, street project sounds like a structural addition, so that will be land improvement. Damage awarded for injury sustained in construction. So ito, may na-injure raw. No insurance is carried. My question here, or ang treatment ko dito is that, is this normally gonna happen to all building constructions na may mai-injure na walang insurance? The answer is no. Meaning this is a extraordinary injury. And if it's an extraordinary injury, we don't capitalize it. Medyo mayroong kapabayaan yung management. Therefore, rather than capitalizing it on building, this should be as an expense. Cost of construction, building, and then the last two will be land improvements, right? Parking lot and landscaping. So the next step is, after mong makategorize under the different columns, the next step would be just the total. So land will now have 316,300. Land improvement will be 93,400. Building would be 2,672,650. And finally, 8,750. So let's look at another example. So again, it's just familiarizing yourself on paano siya kinakategorize. So XYZ company was organized. During the first year of operations, ito na naman yung mga costs. Now, ano yung new part dito? The new part is rather than showing you like a figure, binibigyan kayo ng debit and credit. Nothing to be afraid of. We just really have to properly account for it. So cost of real estate, purchase as plant site. So kung cost of real estate, dahil used for business of we will put it under land. You have real estate taxes at the time of purchase, so that's land. Cost of demolishing building to make land suitable for the construction of a new building. So cost of demolishing. So gusto mo siyang gawing hindi na usable yung building. And if we go back to the PIC interpretation, kapag useless na yung old building, right? Kung pag useless na yung old building, we add it to land. Architect fees and building plans, building. Excavation cost for new building, 24,000. Filling and grading the land should be land. Taxes and insurance for construction, that should be building. Cost of repairs to building under construction by a fire. Again, same with the injury. Is having a fire an ordinary thing to expect during a construction? Not really. This is more of an extraordinary event. And if it's extraordinary na hindi naman nangyayari in all the construction sites, it should be expense. Interest paid during the year, of which 52,000 pertain to the construction period. So if the 52,000 interest is for the construction, that should be building. Full payment to contractor, build. Interest paid during the year, of which 52,000 pertains to the building. Ang nangyayari is 52 is sa building, but dahil 64 to, yung remaining 12 would be outright expense, right? So 64, yung 52 naging 12. Yeah. Full payment to building contractor, 760,000. Cost of constructing, that's land improvement for parking lots. Real estate taxes paid for the current year on the land. So ito, hindi mo na siya tax to buy the land, hindi rin siya taxes in arrears. So past tax, present tax at the time of purchase, this is gonna be a recurring tax. If it's a recurring tax, that should be expense. Insurance proceeds from the fire damage, well, insurance proceeds, nagkaroon ka ng income, and then proceeds from salvage of demolition, that will be under. Dahil because of the PIC interpretation. So again, go back to how we treat it. So again, we just total. What would be the land? So 237,500. Land improvement, it's isa lang, the 36,000. The building will be 856,000. And then the expense will be 23,000 and then 3,000. So basically, my tip lang for you is do all of these exercises and highlight the new terms na mali nyo. So that in the future, you know how to treat them accordingly. So now we're done with the first part. So again, with your exercises, with our discussions, basically, this would be our different PPE types. Next would be subsequent recognition. So subsequent recognition, let's now go to depreciation. So as a review, basically, PPE is initially recognized at the cost at the point of purchase. However, we do a subsequent recognition that we measure it at net of PPE. So net PPE means just the cost minus the accumulated depreciation minus the accumulated impairment plus capital expenditure. So please be careful that depreciation is different from impairment. The same way that allowance for doubtful accounts is different from impairment, right? Depreciation and allowance for doubtful accounts, you do it constantly. And then yung impairment, you check lang at the end of the period na hindi siya more than the recoverable amount. But in essence, ang sinasabi lang naman natin dito is that Sa financial statements, your PPE should be initial recognition minus act debt is equal to net PPE. And yung net PPE is what we call the carrying amount. So pag tinanong sa inyo, what's the carrying amount at this date, at that date, carrying amount is the cost of PPE minus the act debt accumulated to that particular date, right? So how do we depreciate the properties? Well, we have straight line, declining balance, and units of activity. So wag muna tayo magpa-intimidate. Let's first master the basics. Wala munang complication. So in recent years, Freeman Transportation purchased 3 used buses. So tatlo raw. So each bus, iba-iba yung way of depreciating. Si bus 1 that was acquired in 2018 uses the straight line depreciation. Si bus 2, declining balance. And then si bus 3, units of activity. Bakit madali to? Madali to dahil the purchase, so please, first thing that you do when you solve for depreciation, you ask yourself, kailan ba niya binili? Kailan ba niya binili? If it's at the start of the year, wala masyadong complications. If it's at the start of the year, wala masyadong complication. If it's in the middle of the year, that's when the complication starts. So ito, basic muna tayo. Start of the year in purchase, may straight line, may declining balance, and units of activity. Binigay sa inyo yung cost, yung residual value, and useful life in years. So for this portion, I will trust na inulit-ulit nyo yung exercise that alam nyo na how to make the table. Now, I want you now to master the shortcut of solving PPE. Kasi another thing naman nakalaban ng mga tao sa PPE is time. What if wala ka ng time to go to get the table? How do you get the answer quicker? We really just have to understand the depreciation table. So, key concept, straight line depreciation is depreciation expense is equal to depreciable amount. So, what if ang hinahanap sa inyo is what is the carrying amount? What is the carrying amount of December 2020? Pag ginawa nyo yung straight line table, medyo matagal kayo. But if you use this method, within 1 minute, you'll be able to solve it. Ang hinahanap, carrying amount of December 2020. Right? So first, ano ba yung cost ng bus per bus 1? 96,000. Dahil straight line tayo, importante na we get the depreciable amount. So straight line, step 1, get your depreciable amount. What is the depreciable amount? 96,000 minus residual value of 6,000. So our depreciable amount would be 90,000. Next step, step 2. What is the useful life? The useful life should be in years. That would be 5 years. The last thing that you'll double check is, kailan ba yung purchase date and kailan siya matatapos? It's January 2018, so 12 months. 12 months, right? So January 2018, niya binili. So 2018, 2019, 2020, 2023, 2024. So 2024 matatapos. Sa 2018, 12 months of depreciation. Sa 2024, 12 months of depreciation. So tapos na tayo. So we got the depreciable amount, we got the useful life, we double check the purchase date and ilang months ba sa first year and sa last year. We were able to prove na it's simple. So the next thing is we get the annual depreciation. 90,000 divided by 5 is equal to the annual depreciation of 18,000. So alam natin na per year 18,000 yung depreciation. So in order for us to get the ACDEP or the accumulated depreciation for December 2020, we just ask ourselves, how much depreciation will be accumulated until that date? Well, we count. Ilang years ba to December 31, 2020? If we bought at 2018, we will depreciate full year 2018, 2019, 2020. 3 years. So meaning, 18,000 times 3 will be your accumulated depreciation of 54,000. And if you go back to the definition, carrying amount is Cost minus the act depth for that time equals the carrying amount for that time. So, the cost is 96 minus the act depth of 54,000. You will get already your carrying amount of 42,000. Hindi mo na kailangan mag-table. You just got the annual depreciation, multiplied it by the number of months to that period to get your accumulated depreciation. And then you just solve what? Sinolve mo lang na to get 96,000. Right? So, pareho lang rin naman. Like, if you look at it, 18,000, so 18. 18 plus 18, 36. 36 plus 18, 54. So, pareho lang rin siya. Pero, and then 42. Right? Pero, mas mabilis. Right? Hindi na siya hassle. So, please, I suggest na dapat you know how to shortcut. Sorry, 2021, 2022 pala yung purchase. Next would be declining balance. So, the declining balance naman, honestly, wala masyadong shortcut here. You just have to follow the normal thing, which is determine your declining balance rate. So, ang formula is N, so 2 or 1.5 siya, depending if double declining or 150%, times 1 over the useful life, right? And then once you get your DBR, you multiply it by the carrying amount at the start of that year to get your depreciation expense. So, we start. Ano yung cost ng bus 2? 140,000. Ano yung residual value? 10,000. So our depreciable amount is 130. Our useful life is 4 years. And our purchase date is January 2018. So our first year, 12 months siya. Right? So now we get, dahil double declining, it's gonna be 2 times 1 over 4, which will give us a DBR of 50%. Now, let's start. When you purchased it, the carrying amount of 140 pa rin. So therefore, sa year 2018, 140 yung start. The DBR is 50%. So 140 times 50% will give you a depreciation expense of 70,000. ACDEP, dahil wala pa naman, 70. So 140 minus 70 will give you 70. Ano na yung bagong carrying amount? The carrying amount at the end of 2018 will be the beginning carrying amount in 2019. So 70,000 na lang. Times the DBR of 50% will give you 35. 35 plus 70, your ACDEP will be 105,000. So, again, how do you get the carrying amount of 2019 at the end? Carrying amount at the beginning minus depreciation expense of 35 will give you 35,000. Next, in year 2020, you have 35,000 times 50% is 17,500. So your ACDEP right now is 122,500. And then meron ka na lang 17,500. And then lastly, in your last year, 17,500, oops, parang pag multiply ko ito ng 15%, it will go down the residual value of 10,000. So in my last year, I will just force na dapat maging 10,000 to. So in order to make 10,000, ilan pa yung depreciation na I need? Well, binaliktad lang natin yung formula. 17,500 minus blank is equal to 10,000. That blank will represent 7,500 to get 10,000. Therefore, we add 122,500 plus 7,500, magiging 130. So again, to double check, kung tama kayo, yung 10 na residual value is following the residual value. Itong 130, the depreciable amount, nandito rin sa depreciable amount. So, ganun lang siya. And then finally, we'll have units of activity na, again, pretty straightforward. So, it's still getting the depreciable amount divided by the useful life, pero now this time, in units of activity. So, again, in units of activity. Right? So, now, what will happen? Units of activity times DPU will be your depreciation expense. So, let's look. So, again, we first start again. Ano ba depreciable amount? Cost minus RV of 8,000 will be a depreciable amount of 84,000. Yung useful life natin now would be 120,000 miles. So, 84 divided by 120 will be our depreciation of what? 0.70, right? So 0.70 na yung units of activity. And then, anong gagawin lang natin? Yung 0.70 na yun, we multiply it by the miles used. By 2020 raw, 60,000 miles in total. So, in total, yung nagamit. So, adding the miles from 2018, from 2019, all the way to 2020, you'll get 60,000 miles. So 60,000 miles times 0.70 will be equal to 42,000 at depth. So again, ipinapahanap lang sa inyo is the carrying amount of December 20. The way to solve it would be the cost of 92,000 minus the act depth accumulated until December 20, which is 2020, which is 42,000, will give you a carrying amount of 50,000. So, kahit hindi shortcut, ito yung itsura niya. Yung 24,000 miles, ano yung difference dun sa ginawa natin? Yung 24,000 miles, yung 24,000 miles, kaya siya 60, is 24,000 miles plus 36,000 plus 31,000. Ay, sorry. Kaya, 2 years lang because 2019 siya binili. So, sorry, apologies. Ito ang dalawa. There. So, with that said, ang sagot lang natin is 54,000, 122,500, and 42,000. Basically, yun lang naman yung hinahanap na, pare, ACDEP. What's the ACDEP for 2020? 54, 122,500, and 42. So now, let's add one layer of complexity. So let's add one layer of complexity. Let's say, if Boss 2 was purchased on April 1, so si Boss 2 muna tayo. Si Boss 2, nabili siya on April 1 rather than January 1. What is the depreciation expense for this bus in 2018 and 2019? So double declining. So paano yan? Well, we still get the same DBR kasi 140 minus 10 is equal to 130 divided by 4. Same yung DBR. Now, what's the problem? The purchase date now is April 2018. So, full year ba siya? No. In the first year, ilang months? Kung April mo binili, you will have what? April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. December, 9 months. Itong DBR refers to 12 months. So ito, 9 months lang. So rather than 50%, we're expecting this to be 50% times 9 over 12. Kasi for 9 months lang. So, let's solve. For 2018, right, our carrying amount is 140,000. At the start, from April, carrying amount is 140. We multiply what is 50% times 9 over 12. So let's compute. 0.5 times 9 divided by 12. 37.5% or 38% rather than the DBR of 50. Again, bakit? Because 50% refers to 12 months. Pag 9 months lang, it's basically 50% times 9 over 12 is equal to 38%. So that will give you a depreciation expense of 52,500. So yung ACDEP will be 52,500. Carrying amount will be 140 minus 52,500 is 87,500. From 87,500, this will be your carrying amount in 2019. 2019, January to December. It's a full year, so 50%. And then you will have what? 43,750. So ang ACTEP natin is 52,500 plus 43,750 will be 96,250, which is basically 43,750. Itong 43,750, that would be the carrying amount for beginning. So times 50%, so you'll get those. And then finally, in the last year, 21,875, eh alam natin na ang residual value natin is 10,000. If I multiply 50% to 21,000, mas malaki siya than 10,000. Therefore, we will force. So, 10,000 na to. So, how much depreciation expense do I need to make it 10,000? To force it to 10,000? 11,875. So that your ACTEP will be 130,000. So, again, 130,000 depreciable amount, 130,000. Right? Carrying amount, 10,000 should be equal to your residual value or salvage value. So, basically, ito lang yung changes. So, tinanong sa inyo, what is the depreciation expense? 52,500, 43,750. So, are there any questions for 10.2? Well, if there are none, let's take a look at another example, right? So now, we have Pele Industry, which purchased the following two machines for use in its production. This one naman is more of an equipment, right? So, the cash price for this machine was 35. So, literally, marami lang pinapagawa that there are different machines, right? Machine A, machine B. Let's break down the problem and i-classify muna natin si machine A with the journal entries, right? So let's make sure to classify it accordingly. So looking at the problem, we just put it on a table format na in terms of the spent, 37,600 yung ginastos niya for machine A, right? So that's the first step. Now, all we have to do is classify kung ano yung i-add natin for equipment and ano yung i-outright expense natin. So, for cash price, it's obviously equipment. And then we have sales tax, so 2,200. Shipping costs, equipment. Insurance during shipping, equipment pa rin. Installation and testing costs, equipment pa rin. Oil and lubricants to be used for the first year of operations. Parang lubricants, their recurring expenses, number one. Does it enhance the value? Not really. It really just maintains it. And therefore, rather than capitalizing it, we expense. So, 37,500, 100 yung expense. Step 1. We now know that the carrying amount of the equipment is 37,500. And therefore, our journal entry would be debit equipment, 37,500. Debit repair expense of 100. Credit cash of 37,600. Now that we know the cost of the equipment, we can now do straight line depreciation using the shortcut. The cost is 37,500. The residual value according to the problem is 5,000. So our depreciable amount will be 32,500. The useful life would be 5 years. Kailan pinurchase? January 1. So thank God, January 1. Therefore, full 12 months yung first year and last year. So depreciable amount is 32,500, which is depreciable amount. Useful life is 5 years. So our annual depreciation will be 6,500. Then, therefore, our journal entry for the first year would be Dep X ACDEP 6565. So we're already done with machine A. Now, let's go for machine B. So the second part of the problem is machine B. It's really more about depreciation naman yung focus. So let's make the straight line table for machine B. 80,000 minus residual value 5 will give us a depreciable amount of 75 and the useful life is 4 years. So dahil first year in purchase, wala tayong poproblemahin, it will just be 75 divided by 4 equals 18,750. So every year, what we expect is that my depreciation expense will be 18,750 year. My act debt will be 18,750 and then it will just compound every year. 75. So, and then you'll have the carrying amount of 5. So just basically following the table format. So ang expectation ko lang sa straight line is dahil straight line siya, my depreciation expense stays the same year in and year out. Kasi full 12 months. On the other hand, for double declining balance, same yung mga information, pero now it's what? Dahil double declining, 2 times 1 over 4. So 50% DBR. Ano yung next step? So 50%, we apply lang, 50%. And then dun sa last year, we just force dun sa residual value of 5. Right? Residual value of 5. So therefore, depreciation is 5,000. So ano napapansin nyo sa double declining? For double declining, it's not the same depreciation expense. Pababa siya actually. And because, what does it say? Mas nagde-depreciate ang bagong item rather than pag matagal na siya. Right? And then finally, you have units of activity na same in depreciable amount, pero now it's the useful life of 125 units. So we get our DPU. Our DBU is 0.60. So we just get the number of hours times 60, 0.60 will give your depreciation expense. So 37 times 0.60, 22,200. 28,000 times 0.60, 16,800. And then 18,000 times 0.60 is 10,800. And then you just complete the table, which will still give you your 75 and 5. And what are we trying to prove? And this is super important for theory. That regardless of the method, it will be the same at the end of its useful life. Tingnan nyo. Sa straight line, okay, same yung depreciation ko, 18,750. Sa double declining, pababa siya. And then sa units of activity, paiba-iba siya depending on the usage. But at the end of 2023, the total accumulated depreciation is 75,000. And the carrying amount at 2023 will be equal to its residual value. So again, regardless of straight line, double declining, or units of activity, it will be the same at the end of the useful life. So we're done with subsequent recognition of depreciation. So the last na lang is the disposal. And basically, 2 steps lang naman yan palagi. Huwag kayong malilito. This is very procedural. We update the depreciation kung kailan niya binenta. So kung mid-year niya binenta, mag-isa pang beses kayo mag-depreciation to that mid-year. And then, just determine your gain or loss, right? So, let's look at it. And a simple example, let's just master the format. So, Yang Towing had equipment that cost 50,000 and has been depreciated 22,000. So, 22,000 is the act debt. Record the disposal under the following assumptions. It was scrapped as having no value. So, it was scrapped as having no value means that what? First is we credit the PPE at original cost, debit cash proceeds, or now yung act debt, and then wala naman tayong cash proceeds. So ano yung difference? Mayroong kulang na, what? 28,000. So ano yung gagawin natin sa 28,000? Well, it's basically a loss on your disposal, right? Kasi wala siyang value. So 28,000. So sold for 25. At least now my cash proceeds. So again, step 1, credit the PPE at original cost, debit cash proceeds of 25, act debt will be what? 22,000. And then, ano yung kulang? 25 plus 22 is 47. May debit na 3. And dahil debit yung kulang, debit is associated with expenses, debit is associated with loss. So this would be loss on disposal. If you sold it for 31,000, same procedure. Credit mo muna yung PPE at its cost. Debit mo yung cash proceed and yung act debt. you compare. 31 plus 22 is what? 53. So now we have a gain on disposal of 3,000. Kasi credits are associated with revenues and gains. So ganun lang, basically. Pag exchange, iba lang yung formula, right? Let's master the format. Global Co. exchanged old trucks for 64,000 less 22 ACDEP plus cash of 17. The old trucks had a fair value of 37,400. What is our first step? We get the fair value of 37,400 of the old PPE. Then get the cash proceed. So 37,400 plus 17 is the cost of your new PPE. Then we just follow. Debit natin yung new cost of PPE at 54,400. Number 2, we credit the cash proceed and credit the old equipment at cost. So now, 64,000 na to. And then ACDEP is 22. And then ano lang yung difference? 54,400 plus 22,000 will be equal to what? 64,400. Ay, sorry. 74,400. Ito, this is just what? 73,600, right? So basically, ang difference lang is a loss on disposal of 4,600. So paano kung iba naman, mas malaki yung binigay na pera? So same pa rin, fair value of 9, cash proceeds of what? 3,200. So our cost of new PPE will be 12,200. So again, same format. Debit nyo yung new cost of the PPE, credit mo yung cash, credit mo yung old equipment, and then debit mo yung ACDEP. And then kung ano yung difference, since malaki yung credit side, we'll have a gain on disposal at 1,000. So the last is, what if there's an exchange with commercial substance, meaning walang cash exchange? Well, we still follow the same strategy. We still follow the same formula. J Company, nag-exchange raw sila ng truck. So we have J and si Astro. Wala silang cash na binigay, right? May commercial substance. So paano natin gagawin? Debit the new PPE at cost. So fair value 4,000. So 4,000. Credit the cash proceed. Well, wala tayong cash proceed. So nilagay ko lang to kasi we still follow the same format. Kahit na walang cash proceed. Isi zero mo lang. Credit old PPE at cost. So ano ba yung PPE ni J? It's the 4,000. So 4,000, 4,000. So again, equivalent exchange. Credit natin yung old equipments. Si J has a 22,000. Si Astro has 10. And then next is i-debit natin yung ACDEP. 16, 16. 7. May difference ba? Yes. Right? May difference. 22 to, ito 20. So may missing na credit dito na 2. Dahil credit, that should be 20 to, 22 to. So may missing na debit. So yung missing debit of 2,000 is a loss on disposal. While ito naman, 10,000 tapos 4,7, 11, mas malaki tong debit. So may credit na 1,000 na we need to squeeze. That's gonna be the gain on disposal. So again, regardless, sa disposal, yun yung pangbawi nyo. Memorize na lang paano gawin yung journal entry. You'll be able to determine kung ano yung loss or gain in disposal. So, in essence, yun na yun. And then, analyzing PPE, just know that it's presented for your net. So with that said, we're formally ending our exercises and overview for PPE. Again, January 3 will have quiz, January 5 will have quiz, January 6 will have a review, and then January 7 will have our exam. So I hope everyone you'll be able to have a great holiday na ka-rest kayo. But let's push now, we keep the momentum. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone.